As Detective Rodriguez entered the abandoned building, the stench of decay hit him like a wave. He had received an anonymous tip about a possible murder that had occurred here, and he was determined to find out the truth. As he made his way through the dark hallways, he could hear faint whispers and cries echoing off the walls. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as he reached a small room at the end of the corridor. Inside, he found the gruesome scene of a young woman tied to a chair, her eyes wide with fear and blood dripping from multiple wounds on her body. It was clear that she had been tortured before meeting her tragic end. Detective Rodriguez felt sick to his stomach as he surveyed the room, trying to piece together what had happened. The walls were covered in cryptic symbols and messages written in blood, indicating that this was not a random act of violence. The young woman was just one of many victims they had clocked. As he continued to investigate, he uncovered a network of criminals involved in a sadistic cult that carried out ritualistic killings for their own twisted pleasure. Detective Johnson arrived at the crime scene, a small apartment in a rundown neighborhood. The sight that greeted him was enough to make even the most hardened officers grimace. The room was splattered with blood, the walls and floor coated in a slick, sticky mess. In the center of the room, he saw the body of a young woman, her eyes wide open in terror, her throat slit from ear to ear. Her hands were bound behind her back with rope, indicating that she had been tortured before her death. The sheer brutality of the crime sent a shiver down Johnson's spine. Following the trail, he found a second victim, a man with multiple gunshot wounds lying in a pool of his own blood. As he began to investigate the scene further, he discovered a bloodied knife on the floor, along with a trail of blood leading out of the apartment. Piecing together the evidence, Johnson realized that this was no random act of violence. This was a cold, calculated murder, the work of someone twisted and deranged. Detective Emerson sat at his desk, going over the case files once again. The murder of socialite Victoria Sinclair had been dominating the headlines for weeks now, and pressure was mounting on him to solve the case. Victoria had been found dead in her luxury penthouse, a single gunshot wound to the head. The crime scene was meticulously cleaned, with no fingerprints or DNA evidence left behind. It was as if the killer had vanished into thin air. She was well liked in the community, known for her charity work and lavish parties. Emerson had interviewed everyone close to Victoria, but no one seemed to have a motive for wanting her dead. But as Emerson dug deeper, he uncovered a dark secret. It turned out that Victoria's perfect facade was just that, a facade. She had been involved in a string of illicit affairs, using her wealth and influence to manipulate those around her. As Emerson delved further into her past, he discovered that she had crossed one person too many. Consumed by rag. It was her former lover, a wealthy businessman who had been spurned by Victoria and left heartbroken. John was always a jealous man. He couldn't stand the thought of his wife Sarah talking to other men or even looking at them. The jealousy consumed him, eating away at him day by day, until one fateful night it all boiled over. Sarah had simply been talking to a male coworker at a work function, just making small talk. But John's mind immediately went to the worst possible scenario. He accused her of flirting, of betraying him, of being unfaithful. Sarah tried to calm him down, to explain that it was innocent, but John's jealousy had turned into a blind rage. In a fit of anger and despair, John grabbed a knife from the kitchen, and before he knew it, he had stabbed Sarah multiple times. The realization of what he had done hit him like a ton of bricks, but it was too late. Sarah lay on the floor, bleeding and gasping for air, her life slipping away before his eyes. John was consumed by guilt and regret as he watched the love of his life die because of his own irrational jealousy. He was arrested and charged with murder, but the punishment he received was nothing compared to the punishment he inflicted. As Lisa sat alone in her dark, creaky old house, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. The shadows seemed to dance and shift ominously around her, making her skin crawl with unease. She had always heard rumors about the house being haunted, but she had never believed them until now. She tried to convince herself that it was just her imagination running wild, but deep down she knew that something sinister lurked in the shadows. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end as a sudden chill filled the room, causing her breath to catch in her throat. She could hear faint whispers echoing through the halls, their eerie voices sending shivers down her spine. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from the attic above her, causing her heart to race with fear. She knew she should have left the house when she had the chance, but now it was too late. As she mustered up the courage to stand and investigate the The only way out was through the dark, ominous halls that seemed to twist and turn endlessly, leading her deeper into the grasp of whatever malevolent force resided within.